Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you joining us for this session. I'm Kelly Coleffel with Hortonworks, Kelly Cook with ConocoPhillips, Kelly Squared, as Kenneth told us a while ago. We are going to share with you some thoughts and ideas from ConocoPhillips on, oil and gas it's a very mature industry. You look at the assets that they deal with. You've got assets that could live for 40, 50, 60 years in the Gulf of Mexico. You've got people. It's not unusual to find a 25 to 30-year veteran at a ConocoPhillips, an ExxonMobil, another oil and gas organization that's been at that one organization delivering value over that period of time. You look at processes that are very, very long-lived as well. And I think that for oil and gas to translate that to other very mature industries, there's going to be some really interesting insights that Kelly can share with you guys and that we're going to try to discuss over the next 30 minutes or so. Kelly, if you could, maybe introduction and a little bit of background on how you got into the oil and gas industry as well.
Sure. Well, thank you, Kelly. We're not an act or anything like that. So I got into the oil and gas business sort of by gravity, being from the Houston area. I started out life as an accountant. Along came the dot-com bubble. I thought, hey, writing code is a lot more fun than keeping the books. So taught myself a handful of languages and became useful in that space and have been writing code heads down since about 95. I spent 15 years or so at Halliburton and the last 3 years of my career at ConocoPhillips. I've done everything from sort of rudimentary, low-level software development to project management to business liaison management to now director of analytic platforms, which is a fancy way of saying I own all of the technologies that store data and process data. So I've got things like Teradata, SAS, and of course, Hadoop. So with that, dive right in. The way we're going to do this a little bit is that I'm going to present a couple of things, and then Kelly's going to ask me a few questions. And so if you guys have questions, it might be relevant for us to just sort of converse as an audience and presenters, rather than saving everything up to the end. So if you have a brilliant question, feel free to raise your hand and ask. If it's a stupid question, I will mock you mercilessly. So you've been warned.
This is like call and response, like in church?
Sort of, but not really. Okay, so how do you do it, right? We got started on this journey a couple of years ago as a company. Oil and gas is the definition of mature. Spindletop was discovered in 1901. So in a very real sense, oil and gas is 100 plus years old as a business. ConocoPhillips was formed not very long after that. Its roots go back all the way to Murphy Oil, which populated a significant portion of this part of the world in delivering lamp oil as early as pre-World War I. And so the roots of oil and gas are very, very old. And like many other mature industries in this country, those roots are built on first principles science. Those mature industries were developed by men and women sitting down with literally chalk on a chalkboard, working out complex mathematics, doing finite element analysis by hand to figure out what they were doing. And in many cases, stumbling through a lot of things, iterating over decades to come up with the techniques and processes that drive those industries. And we're not alone in oil and gas. There are many other industries that are like that. Mining and materials are like that. Pharmaceuticals are like that. A lot of industries that are represented here fall into that paradigm. They're built on a tremendous wealth of first principles science. So when you approach those first principles science industries with this new era of big data, advanced analytics, and in particular machine learning, you have to approach it carefully. and you have to approach it purposefully. And so that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to be careful and purposeful in our approach and be very deliberate in how we went about doing it. So the way we got started was really these 5 high-level principles. And we're going to iterate off of these 5 just a bit to go into some detail about how things worked for us. So number 1, be rational. The first thing you're going to find is that you really run into 2 kinds of people in these industries. The first are the crazy-haired Mark Twain guys who in some cases are actually as old as Mark Twain. And their approach to your newfangled bringing them all of this data about the process that they've been working on for the last 25 years is that, well, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. So you can leave now because I know what I'm doing and I don't need your help, kid. Which is funny because I'm 42 and I don't really feel like a kid, but that's the way they see it. Because they were there when some of those processes were originally invented. And so you have to understand where they're coming from, where they're bringing their background of knowledge. And when we bring them a tremendous amount of data and a tremendous amount of insight into what they're doing, we have to bring that information understanding who they are. And then you're going to meet a lot of guys, a lot of guys and gals that follow the Deming paradigm. They want to believe you, but they want to know. They want to know for sure that what you're telling them is really the truth. And so they trust you, but they want to see it. They want to see the proof that what you're saying is not something that you've just made up or thrown into yet another crazy elaborate Excel spreadsheet and come up with some funny number in the bottom that no one can replicate and go on with your day. And so when you talk to those folks, understanding what you've put together is very, very important. And we'll talk more about how that particular thread plays into those other topics, about how that affects the people you select, the processes that you develop, and the approach that you go through to delivering machine learning and advanced analytics in a mature industry.
Yeah, Kelly, I think back as you're talking, as a new hire at Hortonworks about 3 years ago, I think I went to one of the CIOs at an oil field services company, wild-eyed and just crazy as a new hire, and he was a Deming guy. And he said, look, do not go blasting around to all of my business units. This was a guy I had right around a 10-year relationship with. Don't go blasting around all my business units. Let's take a very measured approach with this, work with a couple of my teams. Let's see if this is fit for purpose for our organization. We started out with a very small pilot, probably about 6 months after that. Today, there are a couple of hundred nodes and have exploded with use cases, 50 to 60. But I would completely agree. When you look at mature industries, very conservative, and this rational approach, I think, is very, very important as we go down the line on that, and starting that journey and progressing it.
So the message from this slide is curb your enthusiasm, but don't get rid of it, right? Continue to be enthusiastic. All right, the next one is start at the top, and this is my favorite slide in the whole deck because Ryan is my boss's boss's boss as the CEO of ConocoPhillips. So when you can get to the CEO and you can get a CEO to think about data like this, you know you've won, right? Because he legitimately believes that there is significant additive value to a data-driven approach to many of the things that we do in our industry. And that takes time to evangelize. So the takeaway from this slide is spend a lot of your early time evangelizing up the chain of command. Talk to your leaders, talk to your senior executives, get them engaged with visionaries from places like Hortonworks and Yahoo and Google. Let them understand the capabilities that are out there, because in many cases, they're very focused on their industry. They're very focused on what makes their business tick. And so they're also interested in what their peers are doing. And if their peers aren't there yet, they're very unlikely to latch on to something that's genuinely new and disruptive. But if you introduce them to folks from other industries that are doing similar things, you'd be amazed at how quickly they make connections and learn to apply technologies to their industry. One of the great things about oil and gas and a lot of mature industries is that they tend to be sponges for new technologies. They tend to absorb technologies relatively quickly once they figure out that that technology has some application. And so it becomes an effort of exposure, getting your executives and your leadership exposed to what's possible. In particular, things like machine learning and advanced analytics. What can a random forest algorithm tell you about a pipeline's performance? What can a deep neural net tell you about the performance of a well? There are many, many examples of it. And getting those examples in front of your senior leadership is really important.
Yeah, I think there's a level of credibility that has to be established. It doesn't happen on day one. It takes a little bit of time. And I think one thing that you guys at ConocoPhillips have done a good job of, Kelly, is really establishing, here's a visionary within the information technology area matched up and paired with a visionary on one of your business units. And it doesn't have to be somebody that's all the way bought in, but at least somebody who can be willing to work with you and really start moving things forward, at least sponsor and be a bit of a champion. If you can get those two things, I think in general, we see that in mature industries, these projects can move relatively quickly. I think you're going to talk a little bit later, some of the success that you guys have seen at ConocoPhillips. So that would be my major point here is do your best to match the IT side with the business side, both having a combined vision that you can work on together with them.
Yep. So enough sunshine and unicorns. Let's talk about a little bit more concrete implementation of how we put our teams together. Our approach was to pull on 5 different groups of people. And these groups of people we think are critical to a success in big data and advanced analytics. So data scientists are a big chunk, right? That's kind of an obvious one. My next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the data scientists. The one that's not so obvious is the BI devs. So in particular, I'm going to go ahead and hit on this now. BI development communities, particularly in mature industries, are pretty knowledgeable people. They know the data that they work on. Not only do they know the data that they work on, but they know the customers that are interested in that data. And they know how those customers like to see and consume that data. And so those BI developers become a very important asset in your advanced analytics and data science practice because they know where to go and get that data for your data scientists. And then they know how to take the product of your data science effort and your analytics effort and package it so that it's consumable by your end business. And I think BI developers are an often overlooked group when you're starting to put together an advanced analytics or a data science practice. We tend to try and commoditize the BI value chain, but there's, especially in mature industries, there's a ton of tribal knowledge there. And I would encourage you to harvest that tribal knowledge because those folks are very valuable to the organization. Secondly, there's the infrastructure guys. So that's me, right? You want the weird guy in IT who's always taking things apart and experimenting and playing around. When you get things off the ground, it's going to be a little bit ugly. It's going to require breaking some barriers, knocking down some silos. So you need the guy that's a little rough around the edges, not afraid to push processes a little bit further than they were intended to go, push your infrastructure teams a little bit further than they want to be pushed. You need the guy who's a tinkerer, who's ready to make that next jump. You need a Lois. So I just picked the name Lois because I think Lois is a good librarian name. But you need like a librarian type person because you're going to end up with a whole lot of junk. a whole lot of data. Some of it's really, really valuable. Some of it's temporally valuable. And some of it's work product that's really only useful for a very short duration or not useful at all except to the people who are working on it. And bringing all that stuff together into your data lake and then subsequently moving some portions or percentages of it back and forth to your data warehouse world, that's going to get very confusing. You need people who are really good at tracking data and cataloging data and understanding the content of data sets. And these are not newbies to your organization. These are similar to your BI organization, but they're a more specialized skill set. Every mature company has them. They're the people that are sitting out in the business units, out on the edges. They've been there for a long time. They've got this highly specialized skill set of helping the business go get the data that they need. They know where within the giant architecture of various systems that you have, the right value for the right element is actually stored. There might be 20 different places that you have the depth of a well on a certain day, but they know which one is actually the right one. Those people are really valuable, and you need those people on your team. You don't need a lot of them, but you've got to have them because those people add credibility and they make sure that you get the right answers. And then last but not least, you need ETL and EAI devs. You need the people who are doing the movement of data back and forth. Every mature organization has a big ETL, EAI development group. And getting that group on board with what you're doing is critically important because their lives are going to be transformed by how your data lake evolves. They can jump on board and start using that technology and helping you advance that technology, or they can get in your way. They can prevent you from bringing the new technologies on board. Now, how you bring all these people together, that's a question for your organization, and every organization is different. What we did, and what I would highly advocate in the strongest terms possible, is that you get one strong visionary leader and bring the entire organization together underneath that person. Because if you get all those skill sets from all over your organization and you bring them together and you have all of those people working on the same initiative, creating a data-driven organization that is focused on delivering advanced analytics and machine learning, then they're all working towards the same goals. They all buy into the same vision. And that's incredibly powerful. But if your organization doesn't facilitate them all working together, then I think jumping down to this particular part becomes really important. Whatever organization you are in, you need to become a knowledge broker. You need to make sure that those groups of people that are in your company are talking to each other. And you need to get in the conversation with them and make sure that you know what's going on and that you're helping them find the answers to the problems that they need. I think I covered everything on this.
Yeah, Kelly, you and I started working together on this area back in late 2013. Mm-hmm. You guys have had some success. Word's starting to get around the organization, I would guess. Are you having to go every time out to your internal folks to sort of recruit them, or is word getting around? Are they actually starting to come to you?
Yeah, we've seen the shift over the last 6 months where people are coming to us now. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think it goes back to the knowledge broker item, right? We've become the knowledge broker within the company for things analytic and machine learning, and for how to use the new world of open source tools and technologies to get things done. And people are interested in those. They're not abandoning what they've already done, but they're interested in adding to them. And so from a people standpoint, they want to get in on the new stuff. And so they're coming to us, wanting to engage with us, wanting to talk to us about how these tools can help them.
What about, you talked about 4 or 5 different categories of individuals. Can you at least give us a little bit of a sense for how big are those teams at ConocoPhillips today?
Yeah, so in terms of the size of those teams, they vary quite a bit based on what they do. I think the largest group is probably still our EAI, ETL app integration team. I honestly have no idea how big that team is, but it's pretty big.
Yeah.
And the Hadoop team is pretty small. We're a handful of people. And then the data science team is a handful of people as well.
And that's the reason I ask. I mean, you don't have a massive organization right now that's supporting this, yet you're delivering high value back to the business.
Right, and I think that's important to note. Our objective was never to build the one big giant organization that provides all of these services to the company, particularly in the space of machine learning and advanced analytics. Our objective was to do this well and then promote our methodology, our tools, our technologies, our approach back out to the rest of the organization to become a center of excellence. And in becoming a center of excellence, you don't want to suck in all of the work. You want to develop the right way to do things, and then you want to empower. You want to teach people to fish, not do all the fishing for them.
Well, last question on that topic, petroleum engineers, mechanical engineers, are these guys really starting to get interested in saying, hey, I may want to make a shift from my main domain into this analytics space. I see the value. I see that this could be a 15 to 20 year or more run to add value to ConocoPhillips.
Yeah, great question. I think that goes to this point right here, growing your own data scientists, right? There is fertile ground in mature industries. This goes back to the Deming profile that we talked about in the first slide. There's a lot of folks in our industry and in many mature industries who've been with the technology or the science of the industries early on, and they understand it really, really well. And so when they start to look at data science and think about data science, the way they see it is as an additive tool to their toolkit. They see it as yet another thing that helps them develop and build and research and create. And so when you bring them tools and technologies, really what you're bringing them is yet another piece of lab equipment, right? And that gets them excited. They get a little geeked out about that. And so some of them you have to kind of control their enthusiasm, or they'll run a Spark job that consumes your entire Hadoop cluster, and then you'll be in trouble. But for the most part, you want to get them the resources that they need and teach them how to use these tools and technologies so that they can do their job better, because you're taking them the science that they need for that new tool. It also goes to the idea behind this grow your own data scientist. A number of companies have gone out and tried to hire people with advanced math backgrounds that don't have a lot of industry experience, and I think that's kind of a dangerous thing. It becomes difficult, especially in a mature industry, to appreciate that most of the science that they work with is many, many decades in the making. And so you bring in somebody who's a data scientist who doesn't have a background in the physics or the chemistry or the biology of what the core business is working on, and they may not fully appreciate what they're doing, particularly in the area of machine learning, where things like model overfitting are such a big problem. If somebody doesn't have some background understanding of the first principles science, that's a difficult mental hurdle for them to get over. And what we found is that your folks who are already engaged in the organization, your folks who are already PhD geophysicists or PhD chemical engineers, those people are already well equipped to be data scientists. They just need a little shove in a certain direction, They just need to be shown some tools and technologies and opportunity to do something new, or maybe to pivot from where they are into a slightly different direction. Yes?
Question on your team, the prior slide, where do you fit the kind of business analyst, the person that tunes the data, they do the visualizations, present the information to the business? Is that your dev team?
So that's outside of our team. The business analysts in our world are with the business. They're the people who come to us for this service.
Did you bring a few in to help seed this team? And then
We did, but very quickly you'll be overwhelmed with the requirements gathering, the business analysis work. And so from a kind of an organizational management standpoint, it's difficult for a business analyst to fully understand every single business unit and business process and the things that are going on. So it's probably better to have that business analyst in the functional organization or the technical organization that they're working in. So they would be then the interface that comes to us for services. Okay, so technology and people, those are kind of the duh things. But the processes part, right? Everybody who's looked at ITIL for more than about 10 minutes remembers the whole people, processes, and technology. And we spend a lot of time talking about technology because most everybody here at these sorts of conferences loves the technology. And we like to talk about people because that means our salaries go up and we get better benefits and we stay employed, right? But we don't spend a lot of time talking about the processes because generally they suck. They hold us back. They become things that we have to work through or deal with or extra work or, yeah, that's that other guy on the team who does the documentation and nobody really talks to him, but he does that stuff, right? He's the process guy. But the process is really important when we start talking about machine learning, advanced analytics, and data science. And the process is important, especially in a mature organization, for two reasons. Number one, you've got to overcome the Mark Twains. And in order to overcome the Mark Twains, you have to have clear documentation of how you got from point A to point B. And that requires you to have some type of process. You can't just throw your Zeppelin notebook up there and expect Mark Twain to follow it. He's going to go, what the hell is that? I've never seen that before, right? You have to have a meaningful dialogue with him about how you got from raw data to a predictive analytic model. And having a regimented process is what makes that possible. But secondly, when you demonstrate the viability of your process, the data science that you've crafted, you're going to be changing something that's been in place for years. You're going to be changing a manufacturing process, a drilling process, a mining process, a QA process, a safety process. You're going to be changing something that a mature industry has spent literally thousands upon thousands of man-hours developing. And you're going to expect somebody to rely on your data-driven process to make that change. And it's one thing if you're going to sell one more mop at Target, but it's an entirely different thing if you're going to put the lives of people at stake on an offshore platform based on your tuning algorithm for a gas blow-off valve. So how you came to your answer is exponentially more important because of the risks involved, because of the things that you're attempting to do. And so we've got to think about how we do process. We've got to think hard about how we do process, and we've got to plan that process. And that's not sexy or fun or enjoyable. But thankfully, it's bred into most of our industries. Most of us understand it from a mature industry standpoint, and most of us have buy-in for that. But don't get super excited about the people in technology and forget that you need that process, that engagement about how you came to your answer and about how you plan to disrupt the status quo with what you've developed, because that's very, very important to your success.
Yeah, Kelly, I think, some of the, you talked about the safety aspect. I think too, we're not talking about from a capital budget standpoint, a few $100s. Your assets are dealing with decisions that affect hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. When you say, I'm shifting from this process that's been working as well as it can for the last 10 years, 20 years, to now basing off of this new thing, this data-driven approach, this has a huge impact on ConocoPhillips' bottom line potentially as well.
Potentially, yes. So very often, you should expect to not be trusted out of the gate. You should expect things to run in parallel for long periods of time as people develop trust for the things that you're building. Shrikant.
To add to what Kelly is saying, the process, right? As the technology, the new adoption of technologies, for example, big data platform to the distributed platforms like IoT, and how the technology is impacting the process. It's vice versa, right? The process impacting the technology, with technology is kind of, in a way, changing the process. So how do we kind of adopt the board?
Yeah, that is a great point and a difficult dynamic to work out. Because in many cases, so first of all, to repeat the question, how do you manage the dynamic between the technology and the process? Because in many cases, the technology dictates a different way to go about doing things, a different process, a different approach to something. And that is a very difficult dynamic to manage in a mature industry. I think for the most part, at least from my point of view, is that you don't change the process yet. You keep adapting the technology to fit the required process. That's one of the things I love about the open source and the open source community, is that it's very adaptable. It is very open to suggestion. It's very easy to get new content, new technology, new functionality. So,
real quick, Kelly, so I know you want to get to the success side of things. Let's move on to that, because I did want to leave a couple of minutes for questions. And one of the things, as you're going through this, give us a sense to your first true success. How long was that? Was it a day, a week, a year, 2 years? Give us a sense for when you could literally start promoting something within the organization as you're going through this discussion.
Sure. So, our first success, I think, goes back to getting an investment in Hadoop. And the way we were successful in doing that goes back to the people that you look for on the team. The way we were able to get an initial investment in Hadoop is that we went down to the loading dock and we took a pallet of technical workstations that were going to be recycled, and we bought $6,000 worth of drives from CDW, and we found an end of a building that wasn't being used, and we built a Hadoop cluster in the cubes in that building out of these technical workstations. And we had the luxury of finding pretty sweet workstations that had 64 gigs of RAM and a couple of Xeon chips in them. And our initial 15 node cluster was able to process some internal data sets in minutes that people hadn't been able to see before. And we did it for $6,000. And that got the business's attention. They thought, you know what? That's pretty stinking cool that you can do that with scraps that are lying around. And so demonstrating those kinds of successes at that type of financial level is the kind of attention you're looking for.
Just to qualify, that $6,000 did not include a Hortonworks support contract. So, yeah. Question?
Right, so you spend a lot of time talking about how you manage change in organizations that have done things a certain way for a long time. So, and you talked again about how you sort of initiated Hadoop into this organization who had done things for a long time to score a first win, to get them to sort of at least
get visibility towards an alternative way of doing things in your business. So can you give us a little bit more understanding? So once you got this initial win, you chose a proof of concept example, you got people's attention, but over time you had to run things in parallel for a really long time, I'm assuming.
Still.
The basic still, you still have to pick and choose your battles. Can you give us some insight, maybe across your industry or other mature industries, about what are the things you've learned just politically on managing that change and integrating new ideas and new technologies, and how the value proposition, how you go against people who are afraid of losing their jobs because we're now going to change the paradigm and their skill sets are no longer valued. All the types of things that people in this room and other computer paradigm shifts had to deal with. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Sure. So, great segue. I should tip you after we're done.
Don't worry, I'll be up.
Promoting your success is extraordinarily important. And I've got 3 minutes and 45 seconds, so I'm going to go through this super crazy fast. Hang this sign over your cube and promote every single successful thing you do. You have to become a fantastic internal salesman, which means, in part, you do some things that you don't really want to do. When you bring together that team of people that we talked about early on, you're going to end up with some of the more talented people in your company. And that means that that talent pool is going to be in demand. And people are going to ask you to do things that have absolutely nothing to do with big data, nothing to do with machine learning or advanced analytics, but your people are just damn smart, and they're going to be able to do it. And my advice is to do that work, because first, it gives you an avenue to talk to other people within your organization, within your company, that you wouldn't otherwise be able to talk to. And second, it gives you things that promote the value of your team. And at the end of the day, the value of your team is really what you're selling to the organization. And so half my devs right now are working on something that has nothing to do with machine learning. They just happen to be the very best Java developers in the company. And so I've got them working on that project because that project is really, really important, and it has CXX level visibility. And so they're working on that project because it makes a name for us, and it gets us exposure, and it gets me conversations with a lot of people in the company that I wouldn't ordinarily get conversations with, who wouldn't ordinarily come seek us out for technical advice. Now, you've got to have the flexibility and the freedom to do that, so that takes some negotiating skill, and I would advise you to develop your skills as a negotiator. So, on that note, I've got a couple of recommendations as we leave. There are two books that I think have been extremely important for me personally as we've built out a new thing within the world of an existing organization. Selling the Invisible is pretty good. It's a general marketing book, but then the Challenger Sale is a particularly important one. These are both fairly popular salesman books. So if you've had a conversation, after you read these and you have a conversation with a technical sales guy, you're going to recognize that these have been used on you. In particular, the Challenger Sale is pretty important because you're going to be challenging the status quo. And this book goes into great detail about the success of pushing the envelope in the sales conversation, about bringing a new technology or a new approach into a conversation and doing something with that conversation where you challenge the preconceived notions of the person who's asking you for something so that you can inject the solution that you want to sell, which I realize after a while is sort of required reading at SAP and Oracle. But it works. It's a useful technique. And in particular, with the open source suite of technologies, is an important skill for those of us trying to manage these technologies into a mature organization.
Everyone, thank you so much. Let's give Kelly a hand. We'll be up here afterwards for questions if you have any more.
All right, and bonus book. This is a good one too.